Story number 1. The final delivery. The clock on the wall read 11:53 p.m. when the call came into the pizza shop. I'd been thinking we'd close up soon. Sergio, my manager, was already wiping the counters, eager to lock the doors. We didn't usually get calls so late, and any that came were mostly pranks. So when the phone rang, we all glanced at each other, half expecting some drunk messing around. But a job's a job, and I was the only driver still on the clock. I answered with my usual, golden sliced pizza. How can I help you? The other end crackled with static before a raspy voice whispered, 1 large pepperoni, extra cheese. Real old school. No address, no name. I prompted, and where to deliver, sir? Another silence, then the voice recited an address, a place I didn't recognize, apparently in an industrial area on the outskirts of town. My gut twisted, but times are tough and tips after midnight can be surprisingly good. Sergio checked the map on a phone app, found no official listing for the address. Might be a new building or a half-constructed site, he said. Try the cross streets. We found a partial route. The call ended abruptly, the line going dead. I frowned but shrugged. One last run, then we're done, right? Sergio agreed. Just be careful, Manny. If it's a prank, come back quick. I dashed to prep the pizza, extra cheese, pepperoni, threw it into the oven. The order seemed normal enough. The only odd note was the phone number that popped on the caller ID, a series of zeros and a final digit. Some glitch, I thought. The pies came out around 12:05 a.m., I boxed them, hopped on my scooter, and headed out into the quiet streets. The route took me beyond the usual neighborhoods, through half-abandoned warehouses and old factories. The streetlights here were few, the roads cracked, an uneasy hush blanketing everything. At 12:30 a.m., the drizzle turned into a light rain, chilling the air. My phone's GPS struggled to locate the exact spot, so I followed the directions best I could, eventually spotting a row of boarded-up houses near a deserted industrial zone. Rusted chain-link fences, tall weeds, the occasional flicker of a streetlight. The final turn ended at a dead-end street, half-choked with debris. My headlight revealed sagging wooden homes, each with broken windows, peeling paint. The address I sought was 1417 Edridge Lane, but the numbers on the battered mailboxes were hard to read. I dismounted, shining my phone flashlight on the leaning fence. The mailbox read 1417 in faint paint. Bingo! The house was a single-story structure that looked more like a ruin, windows boarded, roof half-collapsed at one corner, no lights. My heart pounded. This had to be a joke. Who'd order a pizza to an abandoned place? But maybe a squatter's or something. I needed to confirm. The phone said no signal. Typical. I crept up the cracked concrete path, the pizza box feeling heavier with each step. The porch sagged, creaked underfoot. A single dusty porch light fixture hung overhead, obviously dead. I knocked gently on the door, the sound echoing in the silent night. Pizza delivery? I called, voice trembling. No response. Just the patter of rain. A minute passed, then 2. The stench of mildew and rotted wood permeated the porch. I was about to leave when I noticed something scrawled in faint letters on the door, welcome. The paint flaked around it. I tried the doorbell. No sound. Pizza delivery, I repeated, half hoping no one was home. Then I heard a shuffle from inside, or maybe it was the wind rattling debris. Another shift, closer. My heart skipped. I gripped the box, summoning courage. The door creaked open an inch, letting out a cold draft of stale air. It smelled of damp, decay, and something metallic. I peered into the gloom. Hello? I said. No face appeared, just darkness. The door opened further on its own, or so it seemed. A wave of dread swept me. Something about the interior hush was deeply wrong. Still, I stepped onto the threshold, leaning in. Hey, if you ordered a pepperoni, it's here. My voice echoed in the silent house. Could be they're messing with me, or some homeless occupant. Another shuffle, deeper in. The hallway barely lit by my phone's glow revealed peeling wallpaper, a floor caked in dust and footprints. The prints looked old, fading into the shadows. My throat went dry. I decided to leave the pizza on the porch and go. That's when a door inside slammed, and I jumped, nearly dropping the box. "Hello?" I called again, voice cracking. No answer. I set the pizza down near the threshold, stepping backward. Then a flicker of motion on the far side of the hall. In my phone's glow, I glimpsed a figure, just a silhouette, darting out of sight around a corner. "Sir? Your pizza?" The figure did not respond. Another door slammed. The hush returned. My instincts screamed that I was in danger, so I turned to hurry off the porch. But I froze. My phone's flashlight revealed something scrawled on the door from the inside. Painted in fresh red letters, "We're watching." A trickle of fear chills me even now. I retreated outside into the drizzle, deciding I'd call the shop or the cops. But as I turned to leave, my phone beeped with a text, impossible without signal, but I saw a single new message: "Don't run yet." I stared at the screen, hands shaking. The sender was my own number. My stomach lurched. Another beep: "You're next." Terror flared. I pivoted, scanning the deserted street. The rotted houses offered no comfort. I wanted to scream for help, but who would hear? I forced my legs to move, heading to my scooter. I discovered something new, a single word scrawled in muddy letters on the seat: "Leave." Fear spiked. I tried the ignition. It coughed but refused to start, as if the battery died spontaneously. Another beep from my phone: "Come inside." My throat felt sandpaper dry. Lightning flared, illuminating the boarded-up houses. I swore I saw silhouettes in the windows. Another beep: "Check the back." My trembling hand nearly dropped the phone. A compulsion overcame me, like an invisible thread pulling me around the house. This is insane, I told myself. But I felt I had no choice. The next beep: "Hurry." I inched along the side yard, the soggy earth sucking at my shoes. Tall weeds whipped in the wind. The house's back portion was more collapsed, a sagging porch that looked one storm away from crumbling. My phone's light revealed a rickety door leaning off its hinges. Something was scrawled on it: my name, Manny. My heart hammered. I never told them my name. Another beep: "We know you." Now panic turned me around, determined to flee. But glancing across the yard, I saw a figure perched near a broken fence, a man? Or something shaped like a man, head cocked, watching me. He wore a muddy coat, face hidden by shadows. My phone beeped again: "Come in or he'll come for you." I found myself stepping toward the door, half delirious from fear. The figure by the fence never moved, but I felt his gaze burning into my back. Inside the back door was a dank kitchen, ceiling partially caved in, water dripping from old pipes. The stench of mold hit me like a wall. My phone light revealed counters covered in grime, dead insects on the floor. Another beep: "Basement." My breath caught in my throat. No. But I could sense an invisible force pressing me to comply. Each step squeaked on soggy linoleum. I spotted a hallway leading to a door under the stairs, presumably the basement. I saw no sign of the person who opened the door earlier. I quietly called, "Hello?" This isn't funny. Another beep: "Downstairs." The phone screen displayed my own number as the sender. I cursed under my breath. My mind roiled with confusion. Someone was controlling my phone, or something. I reached the basement door, found it slightly ajar, a musty draft wafting up. The smell of earth and mildew. My stomach turned. Lightning flashed outside, revealing a reflection in the door's knob, someone behind me. I spun around, phone light scanning. The kitchen was empty. Another beep: "Don't look back." My nerve shattered. I pulled the basement door wide, shining the light down rickety steps. Darkness swallowed the bottom. Something glistened on the steps, possibly wet footprints or blood. My breath came in ragged gasps. I forced a step downward, each stair groaning. Another beep: "Faster." The feeling of being herded like an animal overcame me. The steps ended in a cramped cellar, walls of stone slick with moisture. My phone's glow revealed a single light bulb overhead, dusty, unlit. I tried the chain. Nothing. The room was small, cluttered with old crates, a broken table. The next beep, look on the door. My phone vibrated, nearly falling from my sweaty grip. A door I hadn't noticed stood along the cellar's side wall, wooden with a metal latch. On it, scrawled in dark letters, "You are next." My heart lurched. Another beep, open it. Trembling, I approached. The latch was undone, but the door felt stuck. I gave a shove, hearing something heavy scrape. Another push, the door swung open, revealing a narrower space, more akin to a closet. The stench of rot wafted out, making me gag. My phone's flashlight shone on a pile of old clothes, papers, and bones. My entire body seized in horror. Skulls, femurs, human remains scattered among personal items. A chipped phone, a wallet, a key ring with a pizza shop logo. My mind reeled. Was that from a previous driver? Lightning flickered through a high, barred window, illuminating the remains. My phone beeped. "We told you." I stifled a scream as I recognized a battered shirt embroidered with golden sliced pizza. My teeth clacked together in terror. My phone beeped again. "Now you see. They never leave." I backed away, nearly tripping over a loose board. Another beep. "Look behind you." Against all instinct, I turned. Standing at the foot of the stairs was the man from my porch, the figure with wet hair, empty eyes, duffel bag at his side. Only now, he looked less human, face distorted, mouth too wide, water dripping from black lips. He stared at me with a malicious hunger, or maybe triumph. My breath caught, my legs trembling. He took a step forward. My phone beeped. "He's the last order." My mind screamed for me to run, but I was pinned by fear. He spoke, voice raw. "We feed on those who come," he said, lips curling. "You brought yourself here." Another step. A watery smell, like stale pond scum, enveloped me. "You're next," he whispered. Then he lunged, inhumanly fast, arms outstretched. I yelped, stumbling backward into the grisly closet. In desperation, I swung my phone at him, futile. He caught my wrist, grip cold as ice, yanking me forward. My phone fell, casting wild shadows. I glimpsed his face contorting, teeth elongated, or was it an illusion? I struggled, foot-hooking a crate, sending me crashing sideways. The man hissed, reaching again. Lightning from outside strobe lit the scene. My hand brushed something metallic, a crowbar among the debris. Without thinking, I seized it and swung. The crowbar connected with a sickening crunch. The man howled, reeling back, black fluid spattering. I scrambled upright, heart pounding. Another frantic swing. He screeched, the sound half human, half nightmare. Then he collapsed, body dissolving into a watery darkness that seeped into the stone floor. Panting, I grabbed my phone, flicking the flashlight around. The watery mass was gone, leaving only damp footprints. The crowbar glistened with black fluid that dripped onto the floor, evaporating. Another beep from my phone, "Run." Enough. I sprinted up the stairs, ignoring the shadows dancing. In the kitchen, something hammered the windows from outside. Another watery face pressed to the glass. I avoided it, dashed to the front door. By some miracle, it opened without resistance. The storm raged, but I saw my scooter's headlight shining. My fear overshadowed the downpour. I jumped on, hammered the ignition. The engine roared to life, as if unblocked now. I revved it, glancing back at the house. Figures glided behind the windows, moaning. Another beep, "You can't escape for long." I twisted the throttle, careening down the muddy street. The last glimpse I caught in my mirrors was the silhouette of that watery man on the porch, reformed, arms raised in silent fury. Then the house vanished into blackness. I sped through the deserted industrial area, the storm eventually fading as dawn light touched the horizon. My phone's battery died. I half expected watery phantoms to appear at every turn, but the roads remained empty. By sunrise, I reached the pizza shop, disheveled, traumatized. No one believed me. Sergio scolded me for returning late. The next day, that ghost address was gone from the system, no record of the call. The phone's logs wiped. My mind replays that night, the watery footprints, the horrifying closet of remains, my phone's messages from something. Months have passed. I still dream of that watery figure lunging at me in the basement, the souls of past victims rotting in a hidden closet. I rarely do deliveries anymore. The memory is too raw. Yet I can't shake the sense that the cursed house might call again, dispatching a false order in the dead of night, luring another unsuspecting driver into its macabre trap. Because once you step onto that porch, you may see your own name scrawled on the door, a final notice that you are next. And no matter how far you run, the memory of that watery presence hunts you, like a final delivery you can never refuse. Story number 2. The pizza no one ordered. When I think back to that night, I can't help but shiver at how normal it all seemed at first. It was a Thursday, around 7 in the evening, when the doorbell rang. My wife and I were in the living room, my 9-year-old son Jack playing with his Legos on the rug, and our teenage daughter Erin scrolling on her phone. The smell of leftover spaghetti still lingered in the air, and none of us had given a single thought to pizza. So when I heard the bell, I half expected it to be a neighbor or maybe a package delivery. We definitely weren't prepared for what greeted us. I opened the door to find a pizza delivery guy standing on the porch, shoulders hunched in a black jacket. The porch light cast odd shadows across his face, making his features look half-hidden. He held out a large pizza box, steam faintly curling from the vents. "Free pizza for the Johnson family," he said in a low, almost monotone voice. He wore no standard uniform, no logo, no bright red jacket, just dark clothing and a black cap. Confused, I said, We didn't order pizza." He lifted his gaze, and for the first time, I saw his eyes, flat, gray, as if reflecting no light. "Compliments of the house," he replied dully. "Perhaps a promotion." My wife appeared behind me, shooting me a puzzled look. "You sure you have the right house?" I asked him. He gave the tiniest nod. "Your name is Johnson, yes?" "Number 284, Maple Street." A small smirk curved his lips. "No cost. Enjoy." Part of me wanted to slam the door. Everything about this felt off. But a free pizza? The kids perked up behind me, smelling the fresh aroma. My wife gave a hesitant shrug. "Maybe they messed up an order," she whispered. "We can accept if it's truly free?" A weird sense of guilt tugged at me, but the pizza guy looked so unwavering. We took the box, thanked him. He nodded, stepping back into the darkness without another word. I tried to ask which shop he was from, but he turned and melted into the shadows, leaving no footprints on the damp porch. I stood there for a moment, baffled, then closed the door. Inside, we all gathered around the kitchen island, warily examining the box. It was plain white cardboard, no label. I popped the lid, a large pepperoni pizza, mouth-wateringly fresh, the melted cheese shimmering. The kids whooped with excitement, and even my wife, who's generally cautious, laughed about our lucky treat. The leftover spaghetti was forgotten. We set out plates, cut slices. The smell was irresistible. And so we ate. The first bite was delicious, savory sauce, crisp pepperoni. For a brief moment, any doubts vanished behind the taste. The kids devoured 2 slices each, leaving them breathless and giggling. My wife and I each had a piece. I remember chewing slowly, the slightest bitterness at the back of my tongue. Maybe an unfamiliar spice. I shrugged it off. When the pizza was half finished, we stored the rest in the fridge, ignoring the odd hush that settled in the kitchen. The kids yawned, it was nearing bedtime. Erin retreated to her room to watch videos, Jack to the living room with his Legos, my wife to do laundry, and me to check some emails. The storm outside intensified, a cold autumn rain. It pattered on the roof, a soft rhythmic hush. I recall feeling a bit lightheaded, attributing it to the day's fatigue. Over the next hour, the house took on a strange atmosphere. Jack wandered into my office, complaining that the lights in the hallway flickered. I went to investigate, found them steady. Then Erin texted me from her room, yes, that's how teens communicate in the same house nowadays, saying she heard a knock on her window. Her second-floor window. I checked, seeing only the watery streaks of rain. No sign of anything. Storm wind, I told her, though a prickle of unease grew inside me. Something felt off, like a tension in the air I couldn't name. At around 9:30, my wife turned off the living room lights, heading to the bedroom. I was finishing some paperwork at the dining table when I heard the first faint rap on the front door. A slow, deliberate knock that echoed in the hush of the late evening. My heart lurched. We rarely get visitors after dark, and certainly not in a rainstorm. I paused, half hoping it was just my imagination. Then came another knock, a bit more insistent. Expecting to see maybe a neighbor with car trouble, I opened the door a crack. Nothing. The porch lay empty, the night air cold and drenched with drizzle. I shone a small flashlight across the yard, not seeing any figure. The kids peered from behind me. Maybe a prank, my wife said. I forced a laugh, tried to calm my nerves, and closed the door. Minutes later, the knocking resumed, louder. This time, I flung the door open quickly, hoping to catch whoever it was. Again, nobody. But the porch smelled faintly of pepperoni, as if that same pizza aroma lingered. My stomach churned with sudden nerves. We decided to ignore it. Perhaps some local kids messing around. So we turned off the hall lights, locked the door chain, and parted ways for bed. The kids retreated, the house sinking into a hush broken only by the rain's steady patter. I brushed my teeth, the taste of that pizza sauce lingering on my tongue, strangely metallic. I recall glancing at the bathroom mirror, seeing a flicker of movement behind me, a shape fleetingly crossing the hallway. I whipped around, no one there. My heart fluttered. The clock read 10:45 when I finally crawled into bed. My wife was already half asleep, but I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. That's when I heard the front door hinge squeak softly. My blood froze. We'd locked it, right? Another faint creak of floorboards in the foyer. My wife stirred, muttering, "Did you hear that?" I nodded, adrenaline surging. We hopped out of bed, me grabbing a baseball bat from the closet, telling her to call 911. She tried her phone, no signal. Our landline? It was giving a dead tone earlier, likely from the storm. My pulse thudded as we inched into the hallway, switching on lights. The living room lamp flickered weakly. The door remained closed, chain latched. Windows intact. No sign of forced entry. But on the floor, wet footprints of bare feet, leading from the front door toward the kitchen. My wife stifled a gasp. The footprints glimmered in the lamplight, water tinted with a faint red hue. A memory of that strange aftertaste in the pizza sauce flared in my mind. My heart hammered as I advanced, gripping the bat. We followed the footprints into the kitchen, each step an echo of tension. The footprints ended at the fridge door, the one holding leftover pizza. The fridge door hung slightly open, a bit of condensation forming near the seal. Inside the fridge, the leftover pizza box sat askew. The top was lifted, exposing the slices. At first, nothing else. Then I noticed someone had taken a big bite out of a slice, teeth marks visible in the melted cheese. My wife's face paled. "Someone's in the house," she mouthed. Another door slammed from behind us, the door leading to the basement, perhaps. Or was it the hall closet? I whirled around, brandishing the bat, but all I saw was the flickering overhead light. The watery footprints now trailed out of the kitchen into the dark corridor beyond. We exchanged terrified glances. My wife grabbed a heavy flashlight from a drawer, I clutched the bat. Step by step, we crept down the corridor. The footprints shone in the overhead lamp, each print dripping as if fresh. They led to the laundry room. Another door, a small utility closet, stood ajar. I tensed, flicking on the overhead bulb. The closet was empty, just cleaning supplies. The footprints vanished. It made no sense. The intruder had to be somewhere. Then from upstairs, Aaron screamed. My heart seized. We bolted up, stumbling on the steps in our panic. The upstairs hallway was dark, a single flicker from a half-burnt bulb. Another scream from Aaron's room. We burst in, finding her in tears, pressed to the corner. She pointed at her window. The glass was cracked from the outside, as if hammered by a fist. Trickles of watery slime dripped from the crack. She babbled about a man's face peering in. His eyes, oh God, she sobbed, trembling. My wife consoled her. I rushed to the window, shining the flashlight out into the night. Only the black yard, beaten by rain. No sign of the figure. We huddled together, fear swirling. My phone beeped, a single text from an unknown number, "We're inside." My wife's phone beeped simultaneously. The same text. Our hearts hammered. The intruder had our numbers? The kid's phone beeped too, Erin gasping as she read, "You ate it. Now we're in you." A cold wave of horror. The pizza, some cursed meal that let them in? Was that insane? But the watery footprints, the unexplainable presence, it all pointed to something malignant tied to that free pizza. A frantic pounding rattled the front door again. "Let me in, I forgot my tip," a low voice crooned. My hair stood on end. That was the same voice from earlier, the pizza guy. But he was inside already? Or was he outside? My wife pressed her ear to the bedroom door, hearing thumps from the hallway. "Where is he?" she whispered. I read the next text on my phone, "We're everywhere." In a swirl of desperation, we decided we had to flee the house entirely, risk the storm. We gathered the kids, telling them to hold hands. Another moan from downstairs. The watery footprints spread along the walls, as though defying gravity. We rushed down the stairs, found the living room lamp shorting out, sparks flying. The main door was blocked by the same watery man, hood still draped, face partially hidden. He turned slowly, revealing a grin of rotting teeth. "Going somewhere," he hissed. Water dripped from his sleeves, leaving those red droplets on the floor. My son whimpered, burying his face in my wife's side. I raised the bat. "Stay back," I shouted, voice cracking. The man's eyes gleamed with hungry malice. Another shadow moved behind him, an identical figure with glistening skin, black pupils. We realized the pizza guy had multiplied, or illusions of him flickered around us. The second figure seized the bat, yanking me off balance. I crashed into a table, the lamp toppling. My wife screamed as the first figure advanced on her, watery arms outstretched. Lightning flashed from the window, revealing the intruders' faces as half dissolved, as though made of wet dough or putrefied flesh. My stomach lurched with revulsion. The second figure pinned me, breath reeking of something rancid. "You swallowed us," it whispered, stinking breath in my ear. "We are in your blood." My mind reeled. I spat curses, struggling free. The figure's grip slipped like watery slime. My wife clutched the kids, making for the back door, but the door rattled with banging from outside. Another shape pressed to the glass. It was an endless assault, inside and out. In a last surge of adrenaline, I flung the bat at the second figure, then yanked the kids' arms. We sprinted for the garage door, a side entrance near the kitchen. The watery illusions roared, a cacophony echoing in the house. The overhead lights flickered once, plunging us into near darkness. The kids cried, my wife chanting encouragement. In the garage, we scrambled into my old sedan. Another watery face appeared at the garage window. I ignored it, fumbling the key in the ignition. The engine coughed, the watery illusions pounded on the windows. Another beep from my phone, no exit. I screamed in defiance, turning the key again. The car roared to life. With trembling hands, I pressed the remote for the garage door opener. By some miracle, it creaked upward, revealing the storm-lashed driveway. The watery illusions outside parted momentarily. I slammed the accelerator, the car fishtailing onto the wet street, headlights carving a path through the black night. In the rear view, I glimpsed multiple shapes swarming from the house, shrieking in silent fury. Then the night swallowed them. We drove until the sky lightened, unstoppable fear fueling us. The storm let up near dawn. We ended up in a roadside motel 2 towns over, battered and half lucid. We told no one the full story, only a partial break-in. The authorities found our house half flooded, the front door scratched with bizarre symbols, the leftover pizza rotted in the fridge. No sign of forced entry, no footprints. Just water damage. They chalked it up to some elaborate burglary or teenage vandalism. But we know better. Months later, I can't taste pizza without recalling that cursed gift. My wife still wakes at night, hearing phantom knocks. The kids cling to us whenever it rains, convinced the watery man lurks outside. We moved away from that house. But the fear lingers that once you eat that pizza, you let them in. Perhaps the best advice I can give, if you ever get a free pizza you didn't order, especially late at night from a strange driver, don't accept. Because behind that pepperoni might hide a malevolent presence, eager to seep into your walls and your flesh. And once you hear the knocks in the pouring rain, it might already be too late. Story number 3. The Order from Hell. I was wiping down the pizza counter, half listening to the late-night news playing on a battered TV in the corner, when the phone rang and changed everything. It was close to midnight. My manager, Dennis, had already counted the cash drawer, and we were about to call it a night. The Friday rush had died hours earlier, leaving only the hum of the soda fridge and the lingering scent of garlic in the air. Normally, any call this late was a prank or some lost traveler wanting directions. But it was my job to pick up, so I did, leaning across the counter with a half-board Max Pizza. "How can I help you?" There was a pause of static, then a voice said, "I'd like to order 5 large pies, loaded, pepperoni, sausage, the works." The voice was low, thick, like a bad phone connection. Something in it sent a prickle up my spine. I forced a cheerful response, "Sure thing." "Name and address?" Another beat of silence. Then, "Deliver to Darkwood Cemetery." "I'll be waiting by the main gate." My first instinct was to laugh. A cemetery for a midnight pizza drop? Clearly a hoax. But the voice didn't sound playful. It was distant, commanding, like it expected no argument. "Look," I said cautiously, "we don't deliver to cemeteries." That's a bit unorthodox. A scraping noise on the line, like the phone being dragged over stone. Then the voice hissed, "I'll pay double." I must have them by 12:30. Then the line cut. I stared at the receiver, heart thudding. Double? We never get such tips in this sleepy little town. I told Dennis, half expecting him to say hell no, shut it down. But he just shrugged. Times are tough, man. If you're game, do it. Just be safe. I'll keep the place open till you're back. My shift ended at midnight, but the promise of a huge tip was tempting. I needed the money for rent. So I decided to do it, my last run of the night. 5 loaded pies. The order didn't even specify a name. That alone gave me pause, but I brushed aside the uneasy feeling creeping along my neck. We whipped up the pies fast, mostly because we both wanted to finish. The clock read 12:05 by the time I loaded them into the insulated bags. The address was easy enough. Darkwood Cemetery lay off a lonely road near the outskirts, maybe a 15-minute drive if I hurried. So I hopped in the battered company car, a black sedan with a pizza sign strapped to the roof, plugged in the location on my phone's GPS. My phone glitched at first, refusing to accept Darkwood Cemetery. After a restart, it showed me a route, a winding back road cutting across farmland, turning into a narrow lane that ended near the cemetery gates. Great. I told Dennis I'd be back soon, ignoring the prickling dread I felt. The drive out was eerie. The highway lights ended soon after leaving the main strip, leaving only my headlights slicing through the darkness. A mild drizzle spattered the windshield, and the moon was hidden behind thick clouds. My mind played with all the reasons someone would want pizzas delivered to a graveyard at midnight. A party? A bunch of local kids pulling a stunt? Possibly. Or maybe some caretaker stuck working overnight. Each scenario I conjured felt hollow. At 12:25, I spotted the cemetery's old iron gates, twisted black metal, half-eaten by rust, set into a low stone wall. A sign reading Darkwood Cemetery, EST 1849 hung crooked from the arch. Beyond the gate, a narrow path wound among towering oaks and old graves. The place reeked of gloom and forgotten sorrow. My car's headlights illuminated a sign, "No trespassing after sunset." Then again, I was invited, was I not? For a moment, I considered turning back. But the memory of that low voice echoed in my head, and the promise of a big tip made me press on. I parked just outside the gate, engine idling. I saw no one. The drizzle picked up, pattering on the roof. I honked once, felt foolish. No movement except the sway of oak branches in the breeze. The huge gate had no lock I could see, just a chain undone. My phone read 12:27. The order said 12:30. If they were inside, I might have to meet them. Another wave of unease. But I rationalized, deliver the pies, grab the money, get out. I grabbed the insulated bag with 5 large pizzas stacked inside, hefted it out of the trunk. Hello? I called, pushing the gate open. It squealed on its hinges. The path beyond lay muddy, lined with water puddles reflecting my headlights. I took a few steps in, scanning for any sign of a waiting figure. The darkness among the tombstones was thick, the drizzle forming a whispery hush. The synergy of tombstones half lost in the gloom was deeply unnerving. Hello? I repeated, voice carrying no confidence. I advanced maybe 20 yards, carefully stepping around watery potholes. My footsteps sounded loud in the hush. The headstones, some centuries old, jutted at crooked angles, their inscriptions worn. The drizzle turned to a faint patter on my jacket. Then, up ahead, I noticed a faint glow, like candlelight, shimmering behind an old mausoleum. Maybe that's where my customer waited. The idea of someone lighting a candle among the graves at midnight unsettled me further, but I was in too deep to back out. Rounding the mausoleum, I nearly dropped the pizzas. There, in a small clearing, stood a long wooden table, elegantly set with plates, napkins, candles flickering in tall holders. Chairs lined each side, enough for a dozen people. But every chair was empty. The candle flames danced in the breeze, casting wavering shadows on the mossy ground. At the head of the table was a single silver platter, empty. For a second, I thought this was some bizarre prank. The clock on my phone read 12:30 exactly. Hello? I ventured. My voice felt swallowed by the gloom. The drizzle picked up again, spattering my hair. The candles hissed but strangely didn't go out. No movement around, no sign of any living presence. The tension in my chest grew. The environment felt saturated with something old, a hush of centuries. I set the pizza bag on the table, glancing nervously around. Your pizza? I said into the night. Another hush. I looked at my phone, no bars, no messages. The drizzle hammered the leaves overhead. Then, from behind me, a voice, perfect timing. I spun, nearly stumbling over a gravestone at the clearing's edge. No one was there. The voice had been low, almost a whisper. I stood petrified, scanning the gloom, phone's flashlight flicking across tombstones. My breath quickened. "Yes, sir, your pizzas are here," I managed, forcing a false bravado. Silence returned. A twig snapped to my left. I jerked the flashlight that way, seeing only drifting raindrops. "This isn't funny." I snapped, tension spiking. A moan came from behind me, like a sigh of many voices at once. My skin prickled from scalp to toes. I whirled. The table, the chairs were no longer empty. Figures sat in them, their outlines faint, half-transparent, like illusions formed of mist. Each wore archaic clothing, some in tattered suits, others in old-fashioned dresses. They faced me with expressions of bleak hunger. My heart slammed against my ribs. The candles on the table burned brighter, flickering shadows across their hollow cheeks. In the candlelight, I realized these figures were not quite alive. Their eyes glowed faintly, their skin tinged with an unearthly pallor. One of them, a woman with a sunken face and pinned-up hair, lifted a hand, pointing at the pizza bag. Another figure, a mustached man in a waistcoat, beckoned me. I wanted to run. My legs felt glued to the spot. The drizzle turned heavier, raindrops tapping the table. The ghostly diners watched me with a solemn intensity. Then a shape appeared at the head of the table, the same presence I'd sensed behind me before, a man in a black cloak, face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. He stood behind the silver platter, raising an arm in silent welcome. The other figures parted as if deferring to him. The hair on my arms rose. This must be the host, the one who placed the order. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I nearly dropped it. The screen displayed a single text, "Feed them." My blood ran cold. The mustached spirit reached out, trembling fingers brushing the pizza bag. I stifled a scream, stepping back. The entire group of specters stared at me with hunger or yearning. The candle flames danced across faces that, in some flickers of light, seemed half-rotted or skeletal. Another text beeped, "Your tip is your life." My heart pounded. I had to get out. But as I turned, I saw more ghostly shapes drifting among the tombstones, forming a circle around the clearing. Their moans merged with the wind. The host in the black cloak glided forward, placing one cold hand on the pizza bag. He lifted the top, steam swirling out. The ghosts all stared intently at the pizzas, as though starved souls glimpsing a final meal. Could this food actually do anything for them? In a swirl of unnatural grace, the host slid a slice from the box, placed it on the silver platter. Another beep on my phone, "Join the feast or be the feast." The host turned his head in my direction, hat brim obscuring most features but revealing a hollow grin. He gestured to an empty chair, beckoning me to sit. My mind screamed that I'd be trapped if I complied. But the circle of silhouettes parted, leaving me a path to the chair. I felt a dreadful compulsion. Crazily, I forced out words, I only delivered your order. This is not my meal." My voice shook. The host's grin widened, water from the drizzle trailing down his cloak. He tapped the chair again. Another text beep, "Sit. Eat." My phone's battery was draining quickly, the screen flickering. I realized I was at a crossroads, either partake in this ghostly dinner or become part of something worse. My instincts told me not to eat. But fear overshadowed logic. If they were expecting me to join them, maybe that was the only way out. Heart in my throat, I approached the table. The mustached spirit slid a slice toward me on a plate. The rest of the ghosts still stared, each waiting. I took the seat, the wood creaking beneath me. The seat's cushion felt damp, reeking of mildew. Candlelight revealed more details of these spectral diners: sunken eyes, watery smiles, clothes from different eras. The host stood behind me, silent. Nausea churned my stomach. The pizza slice on my plate looked normal, hot cheese glistening. I forced a shaky breath. Another beep, "Eat or they consume you." My lips trembled. I lifted the slice, each second feeling more surreal. As I took a bite, the taste was normal. Pepperoni and cheese. But an undercurrent of something metallic. The ghosts watched hungrily. As I swallowed, I felt a cold burn slide down my throat. Another beep, "They feed on your fear." I retched, nearly spitting the pizza out. A collective moan rattled through the clearing. The ghost's forms shimmered. The mustache man took a slice for himself, lifted it to his mouth, but it simply dissolved into vapor. A watery wail erupted from him. The woman in old dress tried biting another slice, same result. The host parted the cloak, revealing a gaunt face with pitch-black eyes. He stepped behind me, pressing cold fingers to my shoulder. A wave of dizziness overcame me. Another beep, "Their hunger is forever." Lightning flashed. The drizzle turned to a sharp downpour. The candle flame sputtered but didn't die, as if sustained by some unnatural force. The watery ghosts keened in frustration, unable to truly consume the pizza. Then they all turned to me, gazes fixed. I had eaten some. The host's voice, deep as a grave, finally spoke aloud, "You can hold what we cannot. We want it back." I stammered nonsense, hard hammering. Another beep, "They want your mortal form as the vessel." In a panic, I leapt from the chair, nearly tipping it. The ghosts rose too, gliding around me, forming a circle of silent longing. The pizza box on the table flickered, half the slices vanished, illusions maybe. I brandished my phone, shining the dying screen at them. They hissed, retreating a step. The host advanced, pulling something from inside his cloak, a swirling black aura that crackled with red sparks. He thrust it toward me. The circle closed in. Thunder boomed overhead, wind rattling branches. I seized the pizza box, hurling it at the ghostly circle. Slices scattered on wet grass. The ghost shrieked, pouncing on them, moaning in futile attempts to ingest. The host bellowed in rage, swirling that black aura. I saw an opening between two chairs. I sprinted, weaving among the tombstones, ignoring the wails behind me. Another beep, you cannot outrun death. I raced back to the car, the swirling shapes trailing. The key fob beeped as I flung myself into the driver's seat, jammed the ignition. The engine roared. In the rear view, the circle of ghosts glided from the gate, arms outstretched. My phone beeped again, we'll find you. I peeled away, tires squealing on muddy ground, headlights slicing the night. The road out was winding, but I pressed the pedal, ignoring the rattle of the old sedan. By the time I reached the main highway, the phone died completely. The storm let up, leaving me soaked in sweat and drizzle. The car's clock read 1:15 a.m. I sped to the pizza shop, bursting in pale-faced. Dennis asked what the hell happened. My face must have told him all he needed. I told him the bare minimum, I was pranked, the address was a graveyard, no tip. He cursed the wasted time, closed shop. I never told him about the ghostly feast or the text messages from nowhere. At home, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw that circle of watery faces, heard the moaning for more. My phone refused to power on the next day, as if fried by the storm or something else. No record of those texts. No evidence. The official stance was, I had a weird experience at a cemetery. But I know the truth, a cursed order from beyond, a pizza meant for the dead, a host who sought to lure me into their eternal hunger. Now, months later, I still flinch at every phone ring near closing time. I dread any anonymous voice asking for the works, especially if the address is suspicious. And sometimes, late at night, my phone, a new phone, mind you, buzzes with a single text from an unknown number, we still want you. The hair on my arm stands on end. I can almost taste that metallic tang of cursed pepperoni again. Because once you deliver a meal to the hungry dead, they never forget, and your name remains on their order slip, the final delivery. Story number 4. The last delivery. Working the late shift at Tony's Pizzeria wasn't glamorous. The hours dragged, the tips were lousy, and the customers ranged from drunk college kids to lonely insomniacs craving midnight comfort food. But it was steady money, and in a town like ours, that was hard to come by. That night started like any other. The kitchen was sweltering, the smell of grease and oregano clung to my clothes, and the oven hummed in the background. I was scrolling through my phone, waiting for the next order to pop up on the tablet, when Eddie, my manager, called out from behind the counter. "Got a delivery for you, Pete," he said, handing me a slip of paper. I frowned as I took it. "We're still taking phone orders?" Eddie shrugged. Old lady called it in. Sounded like she didn't know how to use the app. Gave the address, gave the order, even tipped over the phone. Easy money. The order was simple, one large pepperoni pizza, no special instructions. The address wasn't far, just a couple of miles down the road. Still, something about it felt odd. Who even orders pizza at midnight? I muttered, slipping the paper into my pocket. Eddie chuckled. "You'd be surprised. Now hurry up," she said to deliver it hot. The address was a house on Sycamore Lane, tucked away at the end of a cul-de-sac. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of place where retirees settled down to tend their gardens and complain about property taxes. When I pulled up, the house looked off. It wasn't abandoned, exactly, but it had a neglected air about it. The paint was peeling, the lawn was overgrown, and the windows were dark, save for a faint glow coming from an upstairs room. I grabbed the pizza and walked up the porch steps, the wood creaking under my feet. The door had a heavy brass knocker shaped like a lion's head, and I hesitated before using it. The sound echoed unnaturally, as though the house itself were hollow. The door opened almost immediately. A woman stood there, slight and stooped with age. Her gray hair was pinned back neatly, and she wore a long, faded dress that looked like it belonged in another era. Her face was kind, her smile warm, but her eyes, there was something distant about them, like she was looking past me. "You're quick," she said, her voice soft and lilting. "Just doing my job, ma'am," I replied, handing her the pizza. She reached into a small purse at her side and pulled out exact change, along with a crisp $20 bill for a tip. "Thank you," she said, her smile never wavering. "Drive safely." I nodded, eager to leave. As I turned to go, I noticed something strange. The air around the house felt colder than it should have been, and there was a faint smell of smoke lingering in the air, faint but unmistakable. Back at the pizzeria, Eddie was already counting the till. "How'd it go?" he asked without looking up. "Fine," I said, setting the cash on the counter. "Old lady gave me $20 as a tip." Eddie froze, his hand hovering over the money. "What was the address again?" "Sycamore Lane. End of the street." "Why?" His face went pale, and he stared at me like I'd just told him I'd seen a ghost. "Pete, that can't be right," he said slowly. "What are you talking about?" "I was just there." "That house burned down 5 years ago," Eddie said. "An old woman lived there. Mrs. Abernathy. She didn't make it out." I laughed, but it sounded hollow even to me. "You're screwing with me." "I'm not." He grabbed his phone and pulled up a news article. The headline glared at me like an accusation: "Elderly woman dies in Sycamore Lane fire." The picture showed the same house I'd just delivered to, though in the photo, it was reduced to charred ruins. My stomach churned. "That's impossible," I said, my voice shaky. "She answered the door. She paid me. She tipped me." Eddie didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, calm, smiling, and just a little too perfect. The smell of smoke seemed to cling to me, no matter how many times I washed my hands. The next day, I told myself I was imagining things. It was a coincidence, a misunderstanding. Maybe the house had been rebuilt and the article was out of date. But deep down, I knew better. Still, I couldn't let it go. The following evening, I drove back to Sycamore Lane. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. When I reached the end of the cul-de-sac, my heart sank. The house was gone. In its place was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds and surrounded by a rusted chain-link fence. The air was colder here, and the faint smell of smoke lingered, just like before. I got out of the car, my legs trembling as I approached the lot. There was nothing, no sign of the house, no sign that anyone had lived here in years. As I turned to leave, I noticed something lying in the grass. A pizza box. It was the same box I'd delivered the night before. The logo was smudged, the edges blackened as though it had been pulled from a fire. My blood ran cold. The dream started that night. In them, I was back at the house, standing on the porch. The door opened, but it wasn't Mrs. Abernathy waiting for me. It was something else, something dark and twisted, its face shrouded in shadow. "Come inside," it whispered, its voice a low hiss that crawled under my skin. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. But the dreams kept coming, night after night, until I could barely tell what was real anymore. One night, I woke to the sound of knocking. It was faint at first, a gentle tap-tap-tap that grew louder and more insistent. I stumbled out of bed, my chest tight with dread. The knocking wasn't coming from my front door. It was coming from the kitchen. When I stepped into the room, the smell of smoke hit me like a wall. The pizza box was sitting on the counter, blackened and charred, just like the one I'd seen in the lot. My phone buzzed. I picked it up with shaking hands, my breath hitching as I read the notification: "New order, Sycamore Lane." The screen went black, and in its reflection, I saw her. Mrs. Abernathy stood behind me, her eyes empty, her mouth curled into that same eerie smile. "Drive safely," she whispered. The world went dark. They found my car the next morning, parked at the end of Sycamore Lane. The engine was running, the driver's door open, but I was gone. The lot where the house had been was still empty, though some claimed they smelled smoke in the air. Others said they'd seen a faint light in the distance, like a porch light beckoning them closer. And at Tony's Pizzeria, the tablet buzzed with a new order. Delivery to Sycamore Lane. The cycle continues. Story number 5. The Last Courier. I started working for Quick Drop Delivery because it was supposed to be easy. The gig promised flexible hours, decent tips, and minimal human interaction, perfect for someone like me who preferred silence over small talk. The job was simple: pick up packages, deliver them, and move on to the next one. For months, that's exactly what it was. Simple. Routine. Until I got the call about the Drop Zone 79 orders. The first time I heard the name, it was just a whisper among coworkers. Quick Drop employees are notoriously chatty, and while waiting for assignments at the warehouse, they'd swap stories about their worst deliveries. Inevitably, someone would bring up Drop Zone 79, lowering their voice as if saying the name too loud might summon something. "It's cursed," one driver claimed, leaning against his van. "Every time someone gets an order for 79, they never come back." "Bullshit," another laughed. "It's probably just some prank the new guys fall for." But the laughter never lasted. Everyone agreed on one thing: the people who took those orders weren't around anymore. Whether they quit, moved, or just vanished into thin air, no one knew for sure. I thought it was just a story. It was a rainy Tuesday when I got my first 79 order. The details popped up on my app like every other delivery: package ID 90876. Priority high. Drop Zone 79. The address was vague, listed only as Industrial Park, Sector B. I frowned at the screen. Sector B was a section of town no one talked about. It was an abandoned maze of factories and warehouses left to rot when the steel industry collapsed decades ago. Eddie, the dispatcher, must have seen the confusion on my face when I walked up to collect the package. "Something wrong?" he asked, chewing on a toothpick. "This address," I said. "Sector B? That's a joke, right?" Eddie stopped chewing and gave me a look I couldn't read. "It's a real drop. You deliver it like you would any other. Got it?" I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but something about his tone shut me up. The package itself was unremarkable: plain brown box, no labels, just a scrawled 79 in black marker. The drive to Sector B felt longer than it should have. The rain hammered against my windshield, turning the world into a blur of gray. By the time I reached the industrial park, it was already dark, and my GPS had stopped working. I relied on the handwritten directions Eddie had shoved into my hand before I left, but they were vague at best. "Turn left after the smokestack and look for the broken fence" weren't exactly comforting instructions. When I finally found the address, my stomach sank. The warehouse loomed in front of me, its metal walls streaked with rust. The windows were broken, gaping holes that stared back at me like empty eye sockets. The air was thick with the smell of oil and something else, something sour and metallic. I parked my van and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. Every instinct I had screamed at me to leave. But the package was sitting on the passenger seat, and Eddie's words echoed in my head: "You deliver it like you would any other." I grabbed the box and stepped out into the rain. The warehouse door was slightly ajar, creaking on its hinges as the wind pushed against it. I hesitated, my breath fogging in the cold air. "Hello?" I called, my voice swallowed by the emptiness. No answer. I stepped inside. The interior was worse than I imagined. The floor was covered in debris, shattered glass, scraps of metal, and puddles of water that reflected the faint light coming through the broken roof. In the center of the room was a single table, and standing around it were figures. At first, I thought they were mannequins. They were too still, their postures stiff and unnatural. But as I got closer, I realized they weren't mannequins at all. They were people. Or at least, they used to be. Their uniforms gave them away: quick drop jackets and caps, identical to mine, though stained and faded. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide and empty, and their skin had the waxy sheen of something long dead. The box slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. One of the figures turned its head toward me, the movement slow and deliberate. Its jaw opened, and a dry, rasping voice spilled out. "You're late." I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my chest. The other figures began to move, their heads swiveling to face me, their limbs creaking like old machinery. "You took the job," another said, its voice barely a whisper. Now you're one of us. I don't know what you're talking about, I shouted, backing toward the door. You can't leave, the first one said. None of us can. I bolted for the exit, my boots slipping on the wet floor. The air felt heavy, like the warehouse itself was pressing down on me. As I reached the door, I felt something cold wrap around my ankle, a hand, skeletal and impossibly strong. You deliver the package, the figure rasped, its grip tightening. Or you stay here forever. I kicked free and ran, not stopping until I was back in my van. My hands shook as I fumbled with the keys, the engine sputtering to life just as the figures emerged from the warehouse. They didn't run. They didn't need to. Their empty eyes followed me as I sped away, their silhouettes fading into the rain. When I got back to the warehouse, Eddie was waiting for me. Did you deliver it? He asked, his tone as cold as the rain dripping from my jacket. I didn't answer. Eddie sighed and shook his head. You shouldn't have run, he said. Now they'll come for you. The dream started that night. In them, I was back at the warehouse, the dead couriers surrounding me. Their voices echoed in my head, whispering the same phrase over and over, you took the job. You took the job. No matter how far I ran, I always ended up back there, standing in the rain with the package in my hands. It's been weeks now, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. Every time I look over my shoulder, I catch a glimpse of something, someone, just out of sight. And the package? It's sitting in my living room, no matter how many times I throw it away. I know what I have to do. I have to deliver it. But I'm afraid of what will happen when I do. And I'm even more afraid of what will happen if I don't. Story number 6. The delivery that never ends. Working nights at Frankie's pizza joint was dull, but dull wasn't the worst thing in the world. I liked the predictability, the hum of the oven, the occasional drunk customer, the sound of tires splashing through rain as I made late-night deliveries. It wasn't much, but it was mine. The weirdness began on a Tuesday. I remember because it was dead quiet, and I was considering sneaking a second slice from the messed-up orders pile when the call came in. The phone at Frankie's rarely rang. Most customers used the app. I answered it out of habit. Frankie's Pizza, how can I? I'd like to place an order, the voice interrupted. It was deep, calm, almost mechanical. Sure thing. What can I get for you? One large pepperoni pizza. No sides. No drinks. I'll pay cash. Straightforward enough. All right. Can I get your address? The voice paused. I could have sworn I heard static crackling faintly in the background. 113 Grayson Street. I froze. That address was familiar, but not in a good way. Is this a prank? No. Well, it's just, that place has been abandoned for years. The line buzzed with silence before the voice responded. The pizza must be delivered to 113 Grayson Street. And one more thing. Yeah? Deliver it exactly 24 hours ago. What? I laughed nervously. Is this a joke? The voice didn't waver. If you don't deliver it, you'll regret it. The money will be there. Don't worry. The line went dead. I stared at the phone for a long moment before shrugging it off. Weirdos were part of the job. I didn't even plan to make the pizza until I checked the system and saw the order sitting there. Somehow, it had already been logged in the app with cash paid marked. The ticket was timestamped for the previous night at 11:35 p.m. I decided to humor it. Worst case, I'd waste some gas and end up with a free pizza to bring home. I left the restaurant at 11:15, the hot box in my passenger seat glowing faintly in the dark. Grayson Street wasn't far, but as I got closer, the air seemed heavier, the streets quieter. By the time I pulled up to 113, I felt like I'd driven into another world. The house was still standing, barely. Its windows were boarded up, and the front yard was a jumble of weeds and rusted junk. A faint flicker of light came from inside, though, like someone was using candles or a flashlight. I grabbed the pizza and made my way to the door, my footsteps crunching against the gravel driveway. I knocked, the sound echoing through the night. No answer. I knocked again, harder this time. The door creaked open on its own. "Hello?" I called, stepping inside. The smell hit me first. It was sharp, metallic, and unmistakable blood. My stomach twisted as I moved deeper into the house, the pizza box feeling absurdly heavy in my hands. The living room was a mess. Papers and furniture were scattered everywhere, and in the middle of the chaos was a man lying face down in a pool of blood. I stumbled back, dropping the pizza. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The man was older, maybe in his 50s, with graying hair and a lean frame. His hand was outstretched, like he'd been reaching for something. Before I could move, I heard a sound, faint but distinct. Footsteps upstairs. Every instinct I had screamed at me to leave, but something else, a sick curiosity, maybe, pushed me forward. I crept up the stairs, each step groaning under my weight. At the top, I found a small office. A single desk lamp illuminated the room, casting long shadows across the walls. Papers were strewn across the desk, most of them covered in numbers and diagrams I couldn't make sense of. And then I saw it. A photo, pinned to a corkboard on the wall. It was me. I froze, staring at my own face smiling back at me from the photograph. I was younger in the picture, maybe 18 or 19, standing outside Frankie's Pizza in my first delivery uniform. Before I could process what I was seeing, the floor creaked behind me. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I ran back downstairs, grabbing the pizza box on my way out. As I sprinted to my car, I glanced back at the house one last time. There was a figure standing in the upstairs window, watching me. Back at Frankie's, I told Eddie what happened. I left out the part about the photo. I didn't want him to think I was losing it, but I couldn't keep the panic out of my voice. He just nodded, like he'd heard it all before. "You shouldn't have taken that order," he said. "What are you talking about?" Eddie sighed, leaning against the counter. "You ever wonder why no one sticks around here for long? Why half the drivers quit after a few months?" I stared at him, waiting for an answer. "Some deliveries aren't meant to be made," he said. "That house, it's a trap. Always has been. The people who go there don't always come back." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the man on the floor, the photo in the office, the figure in the window. The next morning, I decided to go back. The house was still there, but it looked different in the daylight, less haunted, more sad. I forced myself inside, the smell of blood still clinging to the air. The body was gone. So was the photo. But on the desk in the office, there was a new piece of paper. It was a handwritten note, scrawled in a messy, frantic hand. "You can't escape. The cycle repeats. Deliver the pizza, or it delivers you." And at the bottom of the page was my name. I don't work at Frankie's anymore, but I can't shake the feeling that it's not over. Every night, I dream of the house, of the man lying in the pool of blood, of the figure in the window. And every time my phone buzzes, I half expect to see another order. 113 Grayson Street. One day, I know I'll have to go back. And this time, I don't think I'll leave.